When I asked you guys what kind of content you wanted to hear from me and you guys voted bad shopping habits that you need to break, I was like, do I have content for you? Hey guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Hawa Ridhwani and I post videos every Friday on sustainable and mindful living. In today's video, we're going to be talking about 5 bad shopping habits that you need to break. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to share with you 5 habits that you can do instead to either improve your shopping patterns or to shop more mindfully. So I'm going to start this video by saying that I'm not a minimalist. I really want to be. I wouldn't even consider myself to be a mediumalist. I think I would actually call myself to be more of a maximalist. I have absolutely terrible shopping habits. I tend to impulse shop a lot and shop when I'm really stressed. So over the last year, like during the pandemic, I became a little bit more aware of how toxic and how bad some of my shopping behaviors actually were. So hopefully by sharing some of these behaviors with you, you'll find something that will resonate with you and learn how I have tried to improve my behaviors. And hopefully these tips and tricks that I'm going to share at the end of the video will help you out with your shopping patterns as well. So the first bad shopping habit that you need to break is buying more but settling for less. Now, the issue that we have with social media nowadays is that it tends to instill in us a culture of fast consumption. For example, TikTok videos are 1 minute long. We are constantly exposed to ads on Facebook and Instagram for things or brands that we might actually like buying. The issue with that is that it tends to create a mindset of scarcity as opposed to abundance, and it seems to make us think that we're not good enough and that in order for us to feel happy or fit or trendy or cute or whatever adjective that they are marketing towards you, we need to buy this product or this skincare item or this top that this Instagrammer or this influencer is wearing in order to feel like we're valued or validated in society. And even though that product might not necessarily work for our lifestyle, our personal style, or our skin type, we buy into that product because it's what's marketed to us as being current and on trend. And we end up with a whole bunch of products that don't necessarily suit us, but we end up wearing it because we want to feel like we are part of a crowd or that we are satisfying some kind of, curated checklist that an Instagrammer or influencer tells you that you need, whether it's the versatile black bag or the perfect set of high heels. If there's a gap in your current wardrobe, there's probably a reason for that. And this is totally different if the product or the item that you're thinking about buying that is currently on trend is something that would enhance your lifestyle or enhance your life. What I'm actually saying to you is that you shouldn't settle for anything less than what would be functional to you or would bring a lot of joy into your life. Just don't settle for less. You don't need that kind of mediocre energy in your life. Just no. Move on. Choose better. Now, the second bad shopping habit that you need to break is buying the cheaper alternative. Now, how many times have you thought about buying a product or an item that was way too expensive and way out of your budget, so instead you ended up settling for buying the cheaper alternative? Now, the example that comes to mind when I think about this is that there was this bag that I've been wanting to get for a really long time. This bag was something that I knew would fit my style, it would be functional for me, and it would be versatile because I could dress it from day to night. And I remember thinking to myself that the item was way too expensive. So I ended up buying cheaper alternatives of the bag that would give off that kind of same vibe and same look. But you know what? 2 years later, I ended up buying that bag anyway. And while that bag is now one of the most used bags in my collection, I could have saved myself so much money and reduced so much waste in my collection because I bought all these cheaper alternatives that were not of great quality. So what I'm recommending is that you go for what you really want and you don't, similar to the first habit, settle for less. And sometimes even when you get to that stage where you've reached your savings goal to actually purchase that item, you might even realize that you don't actually need that item anymore, or the importance that you attach to it is not as great as what you made it out to be at the beginning. So yeah, don't buy the cheaper alternative, just go for what it is that you really want. And by the time that you're finished saving up for this product or this item that you really want, if you want it, get it, or by then you might have different priorities or needs. So yeah, assess as necessary, don't settle for less. Patience is a virtue. Habit number 3, and this is something that I would love to hear if anybody faces this, and if you do, please comment down below. Bad shopping habit number 3 that you need to break is purchasing backups. Now, I don't know if anybody else experiences this, but I seem to have this mindset that One day I'm gonna face like a zombie apocalypse that's going to prevent me from buying all the essentials and necessities that I require. And because of that, I end up buying so many backups and like extras for things that I don't actually necessarily need at this time. And that's something that you need to break. And when you get into the habit of purchasing backups all the time, you end up with so many products that you don't actually need at this current state of time. And maybe once in a blue moon, one of these items will actually serve a purpose, and it further perpetuates this cycle of yours that you need to purchase backups in order to be ready all the time. And trust me when I say this, you can probably go without it. Now, the fourth bad shopping habit that you need to break is buying for your fantasy self. Now, let me know if this resonates with you. Now, I feel like everybody has a version of what their fantasy self is like. Now, your fantasy self is the difference between who you are currently and who you want to be. Now, my fantasy self always seems to either be camping. So fantasy Hawa is either always camping or she's traveling. I spend so much money on outdoor gear and travel minis. Now, I don't know what it is. Every single time I walk past a Kathmandu or Anaconda or any kind of store that sells outdoor gear, suddenly I'm training for Everest. I am buying microfiber towels, packable cubes. I'm buying duffel bags from North Face. Like, who do I think I am? Bear Grylls? I don't go camping. I've never been camping in my entire life. The only camping experiences that I have is going for an overnight camp to see a meteor shower. I don't really consider that camping. And the second one was a summer camp that I went to when I was 8. I was in a field with functioning toilets nearby. Like, that's not camping. And another thing that I usually spend money on is travel minis. I actually spend more money on travel makeup minis or travel skincare minis and travel makeup bags than I do actual traveling. What am I doing? What is this? So really, I'm not camping anytime soon, and neither am I traveling. So really, I need to stop purchasing for my fantasy self. And I'm not saying that you can't have aspiration or hobbies that you want to do in the future that may be different from what you are currently doing, but my recommendation is that you consider the current state of your life and whether or not the purchases that you're bringing in is reflecting that. Comment down below if you happen to have a fantasy self. If you do, who is this person? What is this person doing? What kind of bad purchases have you made to support this fantasy self of yours? Anyway. So the fifth bad shopping habit that you need to break is shopping to fill a void. When you are shopping excessively, I want you to consider why it is that you're actually doing this. What are you trying to avoid? What are you trying to fill in your life that isn't currently there? Usually when there are lots of excessive spending happening, there's usually an underlying reason for that. So some of the most common reasons related to excessive spending are related to boredom, lack of personal connections, or lack of hobbies, or sometimes it can be due to excess amounts of stress or low levels of self-esteem and self-worth. I have this serious problem of being really bad of keeping in contact with my friends and family, and I realized so much about how I would spend so much money when I wasn't speaking to my friends and family enough. So I was trying to fill the void of my personal connections with materialistic things, and that's not the way to go about things. So if you are shopping to fill a void, try to be mindful of that and try to nip that in the bud early on and try and replace that with different activities. So I talked about the bad shopping habits that I have. Now to kind of follow up from that video, I want to give you some solutions or some habits that you can do instead to kind of improve your shopping patterns. So tip number 1 is to pay attention to your shopping habits. So I actually use an app to actually track my spending. And this app is really useful because it actually tells me where my money actually goes in terms of, how much money do I spend on transportation, on rent, on groceries, or on shopping. And it's been really interesting since I started using this app to actually see where my spending habits tend to go awry or when it goes really bad. And it's always related to times of stress. So I realized that when I'm really stressed at work, when I'm feeling a little bit overloaded, I tend to spend more. I also tend to spend a lot of money when I feel like I'm not feeling connected with my friends or family, or when I feel trapped. So at the start of the pandemic is probably when I spent the most money. So the next time that you catch yourself mindlessly scrolling through online websites to buy items that you don't actually need, or you're online shopping in order to get retail therapy, try and stop and think as to why it is that you're doing that, and pay attention to those habits so that you're able to kind of be more aware of why it is that you feel like you need to spend excess amount of money. To follow up with that, the next habit that I'm going to recommend is to find a productive alternative. Instead of focusing on consumption and what the temporary happiness of pressing checkout now could do for you, find an alternative activity that you can engage in that will further your development or bring a better outcome in your life. So could you replace mindless scrolling on online websites with picking up a skill or an activity that you've always wanted to engage in? Could you use that time to catch up with friends or read that book you've been wanting to pick up? So the purpose of this habit is to stop yourself from being a passive consumer and try to turn your habit into being a more active and conscious consumer. So when you have the item in your cart and you're ready to click checkout now, tip number 3 is to have a list of questions upon hand that you can ask yourself to actually assess whether or not this item is actually required in your life. So some of the questions I tend to ask myself, and I've got it here on my laptop. Question number 1, will this item bring function or joy into my life? Will I use this item in the next 30 days? How often will I use it? Does it suit my personal style? Does it fit within my current lifestyle? Could this money be better spent elsewhere that will bring me development or better happiness? And the last one, and this tends to always be mostly a no when I'm actually purchasing things, does this company that I'm purchasing these products from and what they stand for and the values that they have, do they align with my own? So have a think about some questions that you might want to ask yourself before you purchase items. And before you purchase something, go through these questions and actually see if they mostly tick yes. If they mostly tick yes, then definitely go for it. Ideally, you want them all to be yeses, but if it's mostly no, maybe you reconsider the item and maybe think about it. Tip number 4 is to practice the rule of blank. Now, this number will actually vary from person to person. I generally practice a rule of, if I'm in a good state of mind and my life is going pretty good at the moment, then I usually wait 7 days to buy an item. When I'm really stressed at work or in my current life, I tend to increase that to practicing the rule of 14. Now, the idea behind this is that you set yourself X amount of days to buy the item and then you leave it alone. Stop visiting that cart. Stop looking at the promo photos to kind of convince yourself that this item will look cute on you. Stop reading the descriptions to psych yourself up to buy the product. Put it in your cart and then don't think about it. And then afterwards, you can reevaluate whether that item or that product that you want to get will actually suit your lifestyle and your current needs. Now, the last habit or tip I'm going to recommend to you is to practice the 1 in, 1 out rule. So just as the name suggests, every single time that you want to purchase or bring an item into your collection or into your life, you need to give up one item or pass it on to somebody else. So the good thing about doing this is that you tend to balance things out in your wardrobe. You can do things like swap items with your friends or sell your items to make a bit of extra money. By practicing the 1 in, 1 out rule, you're not adding unnecessary items in your life or purchasing backups when it's not required. Instead, you're being a little bit more mindful into the things that you're actually consuming and bringing into your life. At the same time, you're also being mindful as to the items that you're not using anymore. And by doing this process, you are decluttering the things that you don't need and hopefully bringing in things that you actually need and want. Okay guys, so that does it for this video. Comment down below if any of the bad shopping habits that I mentioned earlier actually resonated with you. And if so, what are you doing today to kind of improve those habits and shop more mindfully? As always, if you enjoyed my video or you found it helpful, please share, like, and subscribe. It really helps me out. Thanks so much for watching my video, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye. And I felt like I wasn't super connected with my... Tip number 4 is to practice the rule of blank. Thank you, dog.